Let's start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, hello there, folks. Welcome to the Social Y podcast. I'm Thomas Goodine. I'm apparently the editor-in-chief. I guess I gave myself that title. I got Zach Veronikas here and Robert Paulson. No, he's actually Rob Diaz. Why don't you guys give a short introduction of who you are?
Okay, well, I'm Zach. I host the Gamer Bar, and I also do Snack Zach on YouTube.
I'm Rob Diaz. I really don't do anything other than prevent sexual violence. That's about it. And drink alcohol. That's kind of go hand in hand. So.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave that out.
I'm the purveyor of drinking alcohol as well. And we're going to kind of continue off from the last session we had where we were talking about classic video games. And I kind of thought of something I wanted to talk about, but I don't think we really had that much time to get into it. So what I wanted to talk about is classic MMOs. So these are like the massive multiplayer RPGs like Ultima Online, Asheron's Call, EverQuest, Dark Age of Camelot, and that's pretty much it off the top of my head. But I wanted to bring this up because we were talking about classic RPGs and how kind of they had a certain, I guess, character to them that no longer exists in the current RPG world. Not saying that current modern RPGs aren't good games themselves, but they're just different and they're good for different reasons. And in the case of MMOs, I would go so far to say that MMOs have actually gotten a lot worse because of the way that the market has kind of evolved around this free-to-play, pay-to-win idea. But back in the old days, it wasn't really like that. So why don't you guys briefly add something with your experience with the classic MMOs?
Well, I think a big part of why it's gotten so much worse over the years isn't only just the freemium stuff that's coming out lately, but also gold farming as well. I don't think that's always been out there, but it's been around for a long time. And
yeah,
it's been quite a big problem with MMOs, and I don't really know how I feel about it. I mean, you can spend $100, $200 and get like this fully stacked character with like the best weapons, and you don't have to do anything. And there's no work involved in it whatsoever other than paying money. But then the acquiring the money to pay for that takes work. So I don't really know how to feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The whole pay to win, free to play. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I mean, I understand, developers want to make money. Gaming studios want to make money, and that's the best way to do it. Is you tell someone it's free to play, you get them hooked on the basic gameplay, and you say, "Hey, you want to make it better? Let's charge you more for that. Let's say, oh, your character's like right on the cusp of being super badass, and you just realize that you can't make him any more badass unless you drop $10.99 right now for these gold coins to get this item." And you're like, "Fuck, dude!" Like it puts you in a place where you almost feel forced to do it, and it ruined a lot of really good games. I think we just saw, I think we had a little bit of a conversation about this, is where gaming's changed quite a bit since, even just in the last 10 years, where we shifted from it not being as popular, not really being a huge part of pop culture, to being this huge, big deal. But the problem with that is when you start to put it out to the masses, people want instant gratification. They don't want to spend the time grinding. They don't want to spend the time exploring the world. They don't want to spend that time. They'd rather spend the money.
It's a long fucking time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a really good point in that they don't want to spend the time. I kind of jokingly think back to games that I played like Asheron's Call, and I explained to people like all the things I enjoyed about it, but then in my head I'm thinking, man, it was not an enjoyable experience. I mean, I had a lot of fun, but the amount of times that I would spend like grinding for nothing, basically, only to lose all of my progress, or on the flip side, like grinding by myself and dying, losing a valuable item on my corpse, and spending the next 8 hours trying to recover that corpse, only to like create several more corpses, and that experience. Obviously, it wasn't enjoyable at the time, but when I look back at it, I kind of have to laugh at the misfortune of that kind of experience. But also, I would go so far as to say that even within like a couple days of that happening, I would just laugh and be like, talking to my friends and be like, man, you have no idea what I went through over the weekend. I like wasted 8 hours of my life achieving absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you lose a lot of progress when you die. Final Fantasy XI was one of the big ones that I played, and I kind of forget how that worked. I think, but I remember that you could actually go down in levels if you die.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's how it worked, and I didn't much care for that.
Yeah, I think EverQuest was like that as well, but Asheron's Call, I think, was a little bit more forgiving on the experience penalties. Instead of getting experience penalties, you get this vitae statistic that would, each time you die, it would take away 5% of your stats, and then you'd have to use experience you gained after that to pay against your vitae penalty. But the kind of harsher penalty to that is that you would lose items on your corpse, except for rare no-drop items, which were very rare. There's only like a handful of them that I could think of at that time off the top of my head. And also kind of to go back to the whole gold farming thing that I believe it started in WoW, but I guess when I was playing Asheron's Call, they did have this automatic farming using macros, and it didn't really affect the gameplay that much in that time for those earlier MMOs, because there was no easy way to farm valuables or valuables. So people were basically just farming experience and the currency, which was worth nothing anyways, because it basically instantly inflated to become valueless. And people were more interested in trading for rare items off of monsters, which would be a lot harder to grind with macros. But I don't really know too much about how things progressed after WoW. I know that somewhere from the point that WoW became the kind of standard MMO and to today, MMOs have made this shift to being like based on subscription fees to being pay to win.
Yeah, I mean, well, to kind of bring it back, we talk about like EverQuest, where the idea was, you're right, like the currency meant nothing. If you wanted to trade, you had to sit there for at least a couple hours and say, willing to trade, shout out to the entire world, to be able to find someone. And then if it wasn't someone near you, you had to like run across the fucking world to meet up with them, to trade all of a sudden. Or I mean, you can mail it to them and they can, pay on delivery or however it worked. But WoW changed things. I mean, you could still buy platinum in EverQuest. I mean, that was not an issue then. I mean, but like you said, it didn't affect the world nearly as much. Inflation didn't really, affect anything, because everything was by trade. What was valuable, what wasn't, and you had to farm. You always had to farm your mats. You had to always farm everything. So someone put in work, and they were being paid for that. When you had the gold farming, people were paying crazy amounts of money to buy gold. You bought 100 gold from WoW. I don't know. I'm trying to remember how much. It was like almost like $60, $70. Now it's like $70. You get like 100,000 gold. And it changed the way you play, because you could just buy everything all of a sudden. You can buy all your materials, you could buy characters, you could buy accounts. I mean, I remember the only reason I was able to play EverQuest was because I would sell accounts, or you make a good amount of money doing corpse runs because fucking bards for the win. Run in, grab corpses, bring them out. People pay you platinum, use that, trade for other shit, get new accounts, sell the accounts, fund. You know what I mean? So it was kind of you had to make money differently to really enjoy the games, and you had to play them. You had to play them. There was no reason why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And now
it was a big investment. Yeah, time investment.
It was a time investment of your time, not your money. And that's where it changed. The only other game that I really appreciated that really kind of got screwed over by gold farming or platinum farming was what is it? I can't. Guild Wars, the first Guild Wars.
Okay.
Absolutely fantastic. The economy was pretty much based off the players. Like, if things were inflated, it was because people were spending that much money. So you didn't see it really happen nearly as much. Transactions were mainly between players, and the world was just not as open, which made things differently, and it made it a lot more competitive, where you had to focus on the game. Otherwise, you were doing absolutely nothing.
So there's something I wanted to ask you guys specifically about EverQuest, because I didn't play EverQuest too much because I kind of jumped ship to Asheron's Call, I don't know, shortly after it. I know their release dates were maybe a year apart. So in any case, I jumped ship to Asheron's Call, so I never really got to see how EverQuest changed over time. But something that I was under the impression of is that somewhere along the lines, the devs of EverQuest nerfed pretty much everything. They made the world much more smaller, easier to access, and kind of less of this immersive big universe and more of this easy to play, easy to access style of gameplay that we see in MMOs today. And a lot of the time when I'm talking about WoW to people who've played it for a long time, I'll say something along the lines of, I feel like in the early days, you had two types of MMOs, and it was Asheron's Call and EverQuest. And because Asheron's Call did a lot worse than EverQuest, even though it was still a huge success, EverQuest just totally stomped it in terms of how many players there were and how much money it was making. So I think that WoW kind of adopted some of the easy access things that EverQuest had, and because WoW is the standard that every MMO plays itself against today, that tradition of easy gameplay, easy access has kind of evolved from that point on. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, with EverQuest, it was weird. They didn't shrink the world. I'll put it that way. The world was still the world. It was still the same size. Hell, you could probably go onto it now and still see everything that's there. But they made it different. It's weird. Like, when you spawned, you didn't spawn at your starting point anymore for your race. You spawned in this like tutorial area that automatically launched you to this other area where you could easily get to the world. They made moving around so much easier, so fluid that you could completely skip entire areas and never see most of the world. Whereas I remember when I first played EverQuest, if you wanted to get from one city to another and you weren't like a wizard that like had like the teleportation stuff, like your ass was fucking running from point to point to point to point. Like, you couldn't avoid that. And it forced you to explore the world. It forced you to interact with things and find all the cool stuff. And they took that away. They nerfed a lot of different things. That sense of like superpower and having the coolest shit ever just no longer really meant anything, because I don't know, it got cheapened. It ruined a really great game. Once again, it's people wanting instant gratification, not wanting to work for it, not wanting to play, essentially, but wanting to play.
It seems to me like exploration is one of those things that you really don't want to take away from an MMO, though, to me. I mean, like, why would they do that?
Yeah, for me, I guess the actual gameplay aspect of an MMO is secondary to the exploration aspect. I've always been more into the exploration, kind of to my own dismay. I've always kind of had trouble focusing on leveling because I just wanted to explore and explore and explore. So
Yep, exactly.
yeah. So for like Asheron's Call, absolutely, I would spend tons of time running around that world because there was always something that I still haven't seen to this day. Like I actually kind of changing the gears here a bit. I remember in Asheron's Call, I had this abstract goal of getting to every city on the map, and I did that. And then at that point, I discovered, actually somewhere along the way, I discovered that there's a whole lot of unlisted cities on the map. So I started to want to go to those too. And it became something that wasn't really possible. But just that exploration goal was huge for me when I was playing that game. But go ahead.
Don't they kind of make it difficult though? I mean, like you have like higher level enemies in certain areas, and they basically they're guarding the place like it's Fort Knox or something.
With Asheron's Call, it was a little bit different because the world, like when you think about how the world was scaled, it was so huge compared to the other MMOs, and I feel like the way that they made the mobs was a little bit more realistic in the sense that, you know, if you're running around in the wilds, you're not going to find mobs everywhere, you know. You'll see like a tribe of some kind of like creature off in the distance, and you know to avoid that because, you know, after you've played for a while, you recognize these races and you're like, don't go near that shit.
Yeah, the high level shit was always in like the dungeons.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you're like walking to a dungeon and you're like, there's fucking Satan right there, and you're like, yeah, you're gonna die now. But then also what was really cool about Asheron's Call, if I remember correctly, is a lot of the dungeons had a very puzzle aspect to it because you had that jumping factor. So it was like, yeah, you may be able to come in and slay every mob in here, but can you make it through the puzzles without dying? You know, that's what was really cool about exploring in Asheron's Call, was that you came across shit like that all the time. It's like, oh, here's a canyon. You need to get from point A to point B, but there's these floating spots or these like just pillars that are there, and you have to jump from each of them to get to the other side. Unless you had one of those really like one of those items that let you fucking jump like across the map or some shit like that, which was silly, but it was fun nonetheless.
Yeah. That's actually another thing that was really cool about Asheron's Call, is that you had skills for everything. You could add skills into jumping and add skill points into running, so that you could get to this point where you could run like 60 kilometers an hour, or you could jump 4 or 5 stories higher. You know, it was like borderline Dragon Ball Z. It was crazy. But I kind of miss that shit. Like there were so many things that Asheron's Call did that I never saw happen again because it wasn't as popular as EQ, and I've always like kind of been begrudged by the fact that they haven't brought back a lot of these gameplay aspects. The skill system in Asheron's Call was just amazing, but there are some better skill systems out there. But kind of one of the other things that Asheron's Call did, in my opinion, totally by accident, they just had this PvP server, the Dark Tide server, which was like, it was like the epitome of awesome PvP experience. You couldn't ask for a better system, and when you look at how it actually played out, it must have been an accident because of the way that your characters would bind to a life stone and die whenever they got killed. They would respawn at a life stone. You had guilds in this server claiming territories around a life stone, and the stronger members of the guild would kind of protect the life stone from PKs, and then the lower level guild members would be able to grind levels for themselves, and also a piece of their experience would be contributed to the guild leaders, right? So the guild leaders keep getting stronger, keep recruiting more people, and they would get wider territories and start capturing like life stones for dungeons as well, to the point that each guild would have control over a city, control over newbie dungeons, and control over higher level dungeons, so that everybody could get all of the rare drops and have access to the town shops to sell without having to worry about PKs. And the way that this played out was there were tons of power struggles for territory in this game. And when they went on to make Asheron's Call 2, this whole system just disappeared. They didn't continue it. And I think the fact that they didn't continue it is evidence that they did happen across this ingenious system by accident. And I've actually only ever heard of one more game that kind of copycatted this system, but I can't remember what the name of it is. But let's talk a bit about your guys' PvP experiences, if you've had any.
Oh
Dude,
boy.
Fucking Ultima Online. No, thank you. Just to kind of take a step back for a moment, another game great for exploring was Ultima Online. You could literally build a character that was specific to just exploring, nothing else, nothing more. You had cartography, you had boats, shipwrights, ruck around, just explore, and that's all you would do because it was a huge ass world. But then you talk about PvP in that game, like, talk about brutal. You show up,
absolutely,
and you piss off the wrong person, and all of a sudden you realize they have the top guild in the land, and all of a sudden you're hunted, completely hunted for the rest of your gameplay. It made it completely unplayable at that point, where you'd almost have to delete characters. I remember a buddy of mine was telling me a story about how he ganked some player, or these couple guys, and him and his buddies just ganked them and took all their gear and shit like that. Because when you died in UO, you get to loot the corpse. So you get to take everybody's shit. And he's like, oh yeah, and I logged off and I walked into my house, and you can bar off the houses so nobody can walk in. He walks out the next day, takes one step out, and boom, dead. And this just happened for days and days and days and days. He just could not play his character because of that. And it's like, that's fucking brutal.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've never really gotten interested in really PvP MMO stuff, just because that's usually what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always had a kind of interest in PvP, and I would say I'm fairly good at it for the level I would be at. But like I mentioned earlier, I would always be kind of under leveled compared to everybody else, because I did get into the exploration aspect more than the power leveling aspect. So I would just by higher level players, I would get my ass handed to me. But I've always been intrigued in making people's lives a living hell. So I did enjoy doing that in games like Asheron's Call and UO and several other games. But you kind of just reminded me of something. Have either of you guys ever heard of UO Zombies?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's an Ultima Online hack that's turned the game into a survival horror game. And basically you play as a survivor in the town, which is surrounded by zombies, and hordes of zombies keep descending upon the town over time. And if you get bitten, you turn into a zombie. But I don't actually know too much about that, but I was just curious if anybody else had ever heard of it.
Mm.
And kind of the last thing I want to talk about on this subject of MMOs is I have discovered an MMO which it's kind of gearing itself to being the new classic, in the sense that they're taking the best of games like EverQuest, Asheron's Call, and Dark Age of Camelot, and trying to learn from those and reincorporate all these things that we kind of look back to on these older MMOs and don't get to experience anymore. So this game is so intricate in its skill system. There's a skill for dying, there's curses. Like if you go up against a boss and you're too low of a level and it curses you, you could spend the rest of your days in this game playing as a cow. And they give you cow armor, and you can get cow skills and level up the cow skills. And there's a whole quest to turn yourself back into a human.
Can you be milked?
Yes, you actually can be milked, and it's even worse than that.
Sold.
You can have somebody drink the milk off of you while they're milking you.
Even better.
Yeah. So it's, I guess in that sense, it's a little bit like Second Life in the sense that you can do a lot of shit that you shouldn't be able to do.
So what's the name of this game? I'm curious now.
So the game is called Project Gorgon, and it's actually made by two developers from Asheron's Call 2, which is why it's kind of like this. And another thing I forgot to mention about this game, they're putting a big effort to having no wikis, no FAQs, and basically making it as close to the old games as possible in the sense that nobody knows what they're doing. There's no douchebag in the corner of the dungeon saying, okay, you stand here and cast heal 7 in exactly 8 seconds, and you stand over there and prepare your bow as soon as the orc runs out of that door so that we get the best possible outcome for this dungeon. There's none of that shit. Nobody knows what they're doing in this game. There's an amazingly huge skill system, and it's open world in the sense that Asheron's Call was each dungeon is instead of being a private instance. If you go into a dungeon, you could potentially, if there were that many players, you could see hundreds of players in that dungeon. But I don't think there's actually...
or hundreds of cows being milked.
Yep, that too. Actually, one of the more comical things in this game, they have warnings for when you go up against a boss that it's like impossible to not notice. And the reason they put those warnings in there is because a lot of people have joined the game, stumbled upon a boss, turned into a cow, and then given up because they couldn't figure out how to change back to a human.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about MMOs that kind of instantly popped into my head at the end of our last discussion.
Well, see, now you got me on the MMO kick because, like, I don't really... It's not one of the topic discussions that I really go through too much. But...
by all means, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Well, you really think about, the evolution of MMO and how we said, like, it really has changed quite a bit. Many, like, skill systems. I mean, people are trying new, innovative things. You see, like, Age of Conan, awesome combat system. You had to be on point. You had to make sure that, you were paying attention to what you were doing because your combos were keystrokes. That was really fun. What ruined that game was the PvP. They left it too open, so where you couldn't even do anything because someone would just destroy you. It was all PvP all the time, and that ruined that game, definitely. But it was cool. The battle system was the coolest because you had combos. It was like, oh, I'm going to hit forward, back, up, left, right click, left. You know what I mean? Like you had combinations in your combat. And like that sucked because you don't see that again. You will never see that again in MMO. Not executed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Way as good. Another really cool thing was what was it? Warhammer
Online, maybe.
Warhammer Online, yeah. I don't know why I didn't remember that right off the bat, but their PvP system was awesome because you had the different factions, but then they had the collision system set up to where you could literally completely block people out. You get a whole set of like 6 orcs side by side, and they would just kind of walk through, and you had to kill them if you need to get past them. So you do shit like capture the flag in some of the PvP games. You get a goblin, get him with a flag, surround him by orcs or chaos characters, the biggest ones you could find, and nobody could get to him because you couldn't target them because you couldn't see them. You had to fight through it, and you have these just tanks. So it changed the way you played things. That only didn't translate in the instances or the things you would queue up for your, the different play types, but also in the world PvP where you would have to take control of zones, you would have to hold off all this shit, and it was really crucial for you to play your characters in a way to make it difficult. You had to block things off, you had to barricade in rooms, you had to like hold people in certain places, and you won't see that again. You won't see it again. I guarantee it. That made it too hard for people to really figure out how to play, especially if you are, an orc tank and your character could be super badass and yet you still do no damage because they're fucking decked out in armor. And it's like, that sucks, but you figure out how to get past that. You figure out how to strategize. You figure out what skills you do, and you work with other people to break through that. That was the whole point. Once again, instant gratification, people were not getting it. You had to work for it, so they'd fucking bounce. It sucks. The world that, MMOs, like I said, man, just fucking disappointing for the most part. I mean, some of them have these really, awesome skill systems and crafting items and things like that, but you're never going to beat the classics. You're never going to beat the UO. You're never going to beat EverQuest. Hell, even WoW Vanilla, compared to everything else that's going on now, you're not going to beat that.
Yeah.
It's just the same formula over and over and over and over again, which is really disappointing because, I met a lot of cool people playing MMOs. I had a lot of fun, you could say, playing MMOs and learning how to do things. And you really won't have that again unless you're super like, I'm going to sit here for my entire life and play this game.
Absolutely. One of my favorite MMOs, it's kind of the only one that I'm actively playing. I guess, actually, it's more of an on again, off again thing. And Zach has seen some of the videos I've uploaded on YouTube of this, is the Saga of Rhizom. Just a terribly branded and marketed game. But I think the real thing that it suffered from is that it had very unapproachable gameplay, very complicated and immersive skill system. And like you said, you're never going to see something like that again just because it didn't work, because it is too much work. It's too complicated. Even for me to learn this skill system, it took months to figure it out. And I guess kind of unlike learning the skill system in Asheron's Call, where you would have a penalty if you learned things in the wrong order, in the fact that you couldn't train up the useful skills if you learned things in the wrong order. But the Saga of Rhizom's a little bit different in that there was no penalty for your newbie niche. It's just the fact that being a newbie is such a long process in that game. I don't feel like a lot of people could play that game and get any gratification for months. Except for the fact that for a game of its time, the graphics are really good. And the world is quite large, so it's gratifying in that sense. But as far as the gameplay, it's sadly too complicated.
That happens, man. That like games like that you're like, you know what? If you would have came out EQ days, you would have fucking been a hit. Everybody would have been playing it. Because once again, gaming's changed. People don't want to spend time playing a game and figuring it out and doing all this stuff. They want to be handed, where's the next quest, where's the next dungeon, where's the next this, how do I pay, how much money do I need to pay to get what I want? Which has ruined it for everybody. Like, what was it, like Elder Scrolls Online, right? Like, they made an Elder Scrolls game online, first person view, everything like that. Really cool game. Super repetitive, got boring really quickly, and you realize that you really did not want an Elder Scrolls Online game playing it. Like, no, I play Elder Scrolls to play Elder Scrolls, not to fucking play an MMO. And that suffered really quickly. If you notice, it was out maybe a couple months, and then it got dropped down to $39.99 from $59.99. You know there's something not going well over there. People getting fired, things like that, because it's shitty. It's the same fucking shit over and over and over again.
Yeah,
I think it's because it can't be modified like Skyrim, and people can't put those nice big boobies in there. I think that's the reason.
That's probably, once again, you don't You want to have that customization, and you lose it when you make an MMO because you can't have that. You can't. Yeah, you can have your own house, but you can't customize it. You can't pick up every little single item. I mean, you can pick up a lot of shit that you don't need, but at the same time, you can't. You really can't. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. It was kind of a waste and total bummer. Another good series ruined, Guild Wars. Guild Wars 2 was okay, but I don't know. They just tried too hard on that one, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, do you guys, kind of shifting away from MMOs a bit, do you guys remember Two Worlds came out around the same time as Oblivion?
Such a shitty game.
Yeah, very shitty game.
Such a shitty game.
I think I was the only person in the world who actually enjoyed that game.
Yeah, probably.
Mainly because it reminded me of these kind of bird's eye view RPGs for the PC that I guess they were really my first PC RPG experience, and I felt like I was reliving that, but it was not really a it was not really a believable world as far as fantasy goes, for all the wrong reasons, like having basically monsters everywhere, bad graphics on top of good graphics, and just weird combination of things going on.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Played through it. Yeah, you're right. It was weird. Didn't make sense. I feel like they kind of just put it together and were like, well, fuck it, we're done. Here you go.
I feel like with that game, the first half of the game is in like this small area that's like, I don't know, 500 square meters. And then the entire rest of the game is the whole world map, which is huge. It's just like, it's like after they did this one area that they put tons of story and all sorts of shit into, lots of quests, blah, blah, blah. After they got done that area, they're like, well, we're kind of getting close to our budget, so let's just rush through the rest of it. And even like the way the world played out in that, there's like there's these different landscapes that you'll come across that mark a different part of the world map, and really when you get into the latter half of the game, you go into these areas and there's nothing there. There's like one crazy strong boss monster, if you want to call it that, and nothing else.
Yep, sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at screenshots of the game, and it really doesn't look bad based off the screenshots.
Oh no, dude, no, yeah, it's fucking horrible. Like
Yep.
they patched it and all those things, but you start playing things and you're like, hi, look, my horse is running, but its legs are not moving. It's just gliding.
Yeah, it's a gliding horse. It's cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I like gliding horses.
You should actually probably check this game out for obscure games to put on the gamer bar. I think you might actually enjoy some of the awkwardness of this game. Mainly, it does have good graphics. Yeah, it does have really good graphics for that generation, like comparable to Oblivion, I would say. But it's more like the animation of the graphics that's messed up. Like Rob said, the gliding horse and the fire animation is terrible. It's the worst. It's like comparable to Super Nintendo Fire.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they spent all the time detailing it, but then they did not spend the time on how it was actually going to work.
Oh, actually, I just remembered my favorite part about this game. The accents. No character has like a believable fantasy world accent. It's all like American accent. So you're walking through the countryside, you come up to a necromancer, because there's tons of necromancers in this game, and he's like, "Oh, forsooth, young child," instead of like having a British accent. Or what's the one word that they would or the one phrase they would always say? It was like, I can't remember. But I know forsooth was a word that they like to use a lot, and hark, and all of these words like out of Shakespeare, but they would say it in a New World accent.
They should just load the voice acting cast up with Mexicans and and just have them like give like I don't know real accents that and kind of mend them into the world somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, it would probably be more believable.
I'm Mexican. I don't have an accent.
Well, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm talking about my in-laws.
Okay. So, Two Worlds.
Shitty game. I'm just fucking. You sucked. I'm sorry. Cool, you liked it. That was a fucking chore, man. It was such a chore.
I know that most of the reason I liked it is because it was so bad, and like I said, it did remind me of this older style of RPG, but not in a sense that it was like a modern version of it. Just in the sense that it was really like the developers took one of these older games and just turned it into 3D and kept kind of all of the more primitive stuff and didn't modify them to catch up with the times.
Kind of like Neverwinter Nights.
Oh, I love that game as well. But you're right.
Awesome
You're
game.
right.
Awesome game. I don't know. The combat. It was brutal. Just fucking brutal. Cool game. I love it. I replay it every once in a while, but difficult.
Going back to MMOs a bit, have you guys ever heard of this MMO? It's just Neverwinter.
Yes. Super cool, super fun, really simple to play. You have the little base missions and little areas. It's not super complicated. They kind of did almost a better graphic, little bit more of a less detailed combat system than D&D Online, which is also pretty fucking cool as long as you have people to play with. Neverwinter gave you the opportunity to really solo a lot more when you're going through dungeons. You didn't really have to group up with people, but it was fun. It's a game that I'm kind of still leaning to going back to playing.
Yeah, I have played it quite a bit as well, and I was actually thinking of going back to it for a long time, but as time goes on, it just gets farther back into my list of things that I want to catch back up on. But you're right. It was more of a potentially soloable game. As far as I can remember, there's only one campaign mission I did that I needed a teammate to help me complete, but it was a really good implementation of D&D or of the D&D system in that yes, it wasn't complicated like Dungeons and Dragons normally is. It's a very approachable game, but it had some things that you would only ever see normally in real Dungeons and Dragons, and to see it on a playable game like I actually can't think of any of the things. I just know that they're there. These intricacies that you would never see on DDO or any other, like Baldur's Gate or.
Well, the skill system was a little bit more of a nod to D&D. How you build it up, how you build your skills up, and how your classes are. You're looking more towards. I think it was like 4.5 is the rule set they use, or they use a modified pre-5 set for D&D skills, and it's cool, man. It makes it really simple. Still leaves you a little bit of room to customize your characters and play them you want to play them. But it's a solid game. Like I can't deny that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But once again, with MMOs, like you find yourself investing a lot of time, and for someone like me now, like I just don't have the time to invest.
Yeah, understandable. I'm kind of relatable to you on that note. I would like to go back to a lot of these MMOs I've played in the past, but I just don't have the time because they are a huge time investment. And as far as time investments go, I would rather sink my time into another wasteful bucket like Pokemon than
Candy Crush.
Candy Crush. No comment.
Farmville.
I'm sorry. Pokemon, Candy Crush, same thing. Don't get me wrong, love Pokemon games. It's the same fucking game over and over and over again, and none of them will be as good as the original.
Fair
Oh
enough.
god, you ever watch that? You ever watch that old Pokemon cartoon?
Although the older one where it was like Ash and Pikachu adventures and
Yeah.
yeah.
I've actually
I don't know what they're like now, but
I've actually been
Yeah, good watch.
rewatching. I've been rewatching all the older episodes. I'm up to season 4 now, and it's kind of embarrassing that I've gotten that far and haven't given up. It's more like I'm just doing it to say that I've gotten through it.
You know what though?
that show was really emotional.
You know what they did though is they did the oh fuck, I forget the name of it. It wasn't based off of the older one, but they did a newer version of, it was like Pokemon Red or something like that, where it was like a lot more grittier, a lot more like, it wasn't about like Ash and Pikachu. It was about Red and then his Pokemon. It was just fucking I can't remember. It was so much more brutal. Oh, what is it? Now I gotta find this. So go ahead and continue while I figure out what the fuck this is.
Wait, who's Red?
Red is the original is Ash essentially in the original Pokemon games. You play Red or Blue depending on which version it is, but for canon it's always Red. He's like the main trainer. So usually at the end of like what was it, like Silver and Gold or whatever, like you play through the Elite Four and then you have to go in this cave and then you fight Red and he is like the actual final boss. And you fight him and he has like a Blastoise, Charmander, Charizard, and what's the green one? The Max?
Venusaur.
And a Venusaur and a Mew and a Dragonite. He has all these like the big Pokemon you pick up and an Eevee. I don't know why he doesn't have it evolved, but he has an Eevee.
That's actually really funny because in Pokemon Yellow they always made Blue out to be the character with the Eevee, right? And then to have Ash with an Eevee at the end of Gold and Silver is a little bizarre in that sense.
He killed Blue.
Yeah,
He murdered Blue.
he killed Blue. So that it's a little bit funny because Blue he actually becomes one of the gym leaders in Gold and Silver. But I guess you could come up with some kind of conspiracy theory with how he killed Blue and then acted as Blue, and then at the end of the game went back to Mount Silver to be Red.
He paid off Blue's brother.
Except
Paid off Blue's brother.
except we all know like Blue is Gary Oak in the anime, right? And Gary Oak is he's a motherfucker. That guy is too impossible. He can't be.
Oh,
beat.
is that the really rude ass guy?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay. I don't play much anymore.
There's a meme I kind of like with Gary Oak, and it's there's a point in the anime where he's showing Ash all the badges that he's caught to go to the Pokemon League, and he's caught 10 badges, and then somebody turned this into a motivational poster, and it says Gary Oak caught 10 badges, only 8 badges in Kanto.
He's that much of a badass, dude.
Yeah, he's that badass.
So I found it. It's called Pokemon Origins. And so basically it was a four episode miniseries that was done a little bit more truer to the original Pokemon games. So it follows Red and he chooses Charmander. Blue, which would be Gary, chooses a Squirtle, and then it kind of goes through the game and picks out the big points. So you have like Lavender Town and the Tower, Pokemon Tower, so they play that in one of them. Then they have the whole thing with Team Rocket and Giovanni, and then the last one's where he like goes to face the Elite Four. So it kind of skips through the game to some of the major points, and it's a lot more brutal. It's a lot more closer to the manga, where it's like, like when shit goes down, like it goes down. It's not cute little monsters anymore. It's fucking animal fights, like basically like dog fights with Pokemon.
Like Michael Vick would be there.
Yeah, exactly. with his what is it? What are the dog ones? His Growlites all fucked up and shit. It's like that. It's a little bit more realer. It's a little bit more raw, and it's definitely made for the kids that grew up with the original Pokemon games. Not so much the kids that are watching the cartoon now. I have not seen it yet, but it's gonna happen now because I just remembered it.
Yeah. I guarantee you that I'm gonna watch this, being as big of a Pokemon nerd that I am. But you were just as you were talking, you mentioned that Lavender Town makes it into this, and it kind of reminded me of this creepypasta wiki thing, Lavender Town syndrome. So I looked it up on the creepypasta wiki, which is crazy in its own sense. But here's the first paragraph they have on the creepypasta wiki for Lavender Town syndrome. The Lavender Town syndrome was a peak in suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12, shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan back in February 26, 1996. Creepypasta shit. It's probably not real, but every time I think of Lavender Town, this concept pops into my head.
Yeah, all those little creepy things and children dying from video games. Too much fun.
Yeah, so kind of the myth here is that the music from Lavender Town in the game was driving children to commit suicide in Japan.
Oh, that's a bummer. That kind of ruins things. Oh, fucking Japanese have it so hard sometimes. I feel bad all the shit that comes out of there.
Yeah, didn't they? There was a big problem. Well, I don't know if you can call it a big problem, but there's a problem from my perspective in that, and from a lot of people's perspective in that, for the longest time, Japanese anime would allow pedophilic rape scenes in it without any kind of rules forbidding that. But actually, I believe, don't quote me on this till I get to cross-check my facts here, but I believe they just passed a law forbidding this kind of thing in Japan now. So I'm just going to check that out really quickly here.
Well, hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a cultural thing with these kind of things. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. Like it's different. Like when I say like poor Japanese, it's more of like the public perception of what goes on over there, and then actually understanding what the culture is and why they do those things. And like I don't have enough knowledge to really make a valuable contribution to that conversation because I've never been to Japan and I really know very few people who have, and I have very few friends that are from there. So even then, most of them are kind of a little bit more Americanized now. So it's kind of hard to really understand it, and at the same time, really hard to judge it, despite tentacle rape of children, and which is just fucked up. However you look at that.
Well, despite all the freaky shit, I have kind of wanted to go over there for quite some time.
Oh, that's still on my list, dude. That's still gonna happen one day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Akihabara? Are you kidding me? The town with all the video game stuff and
Yeah, I didn't know what that was.
I remember that from Shin Megami Tensei, because they always take place in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So just Googling this, I found some article on CNN, and just skimming past it, it seems like this law is still not passed. Basically, the lawmakers in Japan have kind of been skirting around making this representation of pedophilia finable by up to a year in jail and $10,000. So not a small thing if it does end up going through. But again, like while I don't agree obviously with pedophilia or the representation of pedophilia in anime, I also have to say that it really seems like a very strict penalty for not having actually physically hurt anybody.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Dude.
We're going down kind of a dark road here.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna. You have 15 minutes. I don't know if it's really worth going through it, but I'll put it this way. Pedophilia itself, people can be pedophiles and never touch children. But the problem is there's still an exploitation of children happening, regardless of whether or not they're real or fake, animated or not. And that's an issue in itself. I mean, that's definitely a conversation for another day. But morally, it places the idea that this behavior to children is okay. Whether or not people enact on that, is purely on the individual. It's like when we talk about video games and violence, yeah, dude, like it says, it kind of reinforces the idea that violence is okay, but it's up to the individual and the environment around them to tell them that no, actually it isn't outside of this gaming world. Where we fail to do that many times. That's kind of, and that goes in any culture whatsoever, man. Like it doesn't matter whether it's Western or Eastern or, in between.
To me, it's weird where the priorities are, because I mean, like on one hand, you got like these cartoon little girls getting raped, and then on the other hand, they censor out the dicks and vag. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, that is a really good point. I guess, kind of for me, it's such a it is a slippery slope in that, you can raise this cause and effect type argument, or you can say, even though the creator of this cartoon wasn't exploiting children directly, he's exploiting some idea that's kind of related to actually committing these crimes. And, while I don't think a harsh penalty is really justified for kind of a hypothetical crime, I do think there should be some kind of penalty. If you were to ask me what it should be, I can't really give an answer to that because I haven't thought about it enough. But it's a really hard thing to actually come up with an answer for. And I think part of that is because people don't really want to think about it. They just want to say, no, it's wrong. We're not going to even talk about it. We're not going to approach it.
And that's a huge issue in itself too, is the fact that they don't want to approach it because then you don't get anything done. Yeah, I mean, really, without getting into it, that's an issue to not address it and to be so afraid of something that you don't want to take care of it. You prefer to sweep it under the rug, especially if you're someone that it doesn't affect. That's another thing too. So. And I say that with quotations, doesn't affect. You know what I mean? Like, because I forgot we're doing this all recording. So, yeah. Such is life.
Do you guys, are you guys familiar with Louis Theroux? He's a BBC documentarian.
Nope.
Nobody I've ever asked this to has said yes. So basically, he did a documentary of where he went into a prison with convicted pedophiles, and he spent an hour talking to these people, and it's just a really weird documentary in that, like, you usually don't get to see these people on camera for an hour normally, right? Actually, I think it was a 2-hour documentary, but it's a very disturbing documentary, and there's certain parts.
Sounds like 2 hours of sunshine.
Oh yeah, there's certain parts where he's kind of talking about how they handle these people, and it really sounds like the system doesn't know what to do with them either, because the ways that they're kind of placing them in these prisons, and I honestly don't know what they're trying to do. It seems like they're trying to rehabilitate them, but without ever having the conviction to actually put them back out there. It's really bizarre.
Where is the prison?
I think it's somewhere somewhere in California, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a special prison for convicted rapists, and most of the people here are actually pedophiles. But I guess another thing that's weird is like you have a handful of people in this prison that they committed rape against an adult versus the ones who the majority who committed against a child. And you see like there's some kind of it's like a really weird dynamic between the two, where the ones who raped the adults kind of see themselves as hardened criminals, and the other ones are just these really socially awkward people who, you know, just to see how they.
I kind of think that it's good that people who commit the same crime are kind of being placed with each other.
Yeah.
As opposed to the crazy sex offender and the guy who blew a .08 while driving his car to blocked on the supermarket or something like that. It makes me feel a little bit better that it works that way.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you. If I'm coming off differently, it's more just because the whole situation itself is bizarre in how it seems like they're trying to rehabilitate these people with just these really bizarre things, like, you know, showing them they're like getting them in these rooms and then showing them images of kids playing in the playground, and then they would like tie a string around their penis with a gauge attached to it to see if they're getting any like increased blood flow in their penis. And
I guess that'd be the only way to really completely find out beyond a
well,
reasonable doubt.
if it even works that way, right? Like it's just such a bizarre thing to do, and I'm not sure if it's actually getting them the kind of result that they would want. But it's kind of a funny procedure because they even have safeties in place for if they're faking not having an erection.
Well, you know, here's the thing, and like I said before, you know, maybe this is something we can kind of piggyback on for next time, you know, is that we talk about perpetrators and what they do, and realistically, when you have to look at stuff like sexual assault, rape, molestation, things like that, it's really less about that sexual desire and that sexual attraction, and so much more about power and control and having that, and that's what they get off to. It's been noted that, you know, people that are castrated, you know, or, you know, even having their penises taken off and like altogether, you know, still get arousal from doing those things and are still known to perpetrate despite not having a penis and testicles, you know, because it's not about the sex. You know what I mean? It's not about the sexual gratification. It's about that power, that dominance, and that control, and it fulfills a need somewhere else in the psyche, not so much the physical need that everyone assumes is what's really going on. So I don't really think there's an actual prison per se as to what you're talking about, but there probably is some kind of medical facility specifically for that. More likely than not, a private institution where they do shit like that, because, you know, that is real.
Yeah. Jeez, it's such a bizarre thing that this podcast has become. In 2 episodes, our big hot topics have become, well, I guess, like you said last time, rape kind of comes with the territory of being somebody who talks about rape.
Yeah, my bad, guys. My bad to bring that juju, you know, into this, but, you know, it does, you know, it's there, you know.
Do we have any more time left, Tom?
We're just about to time, so we probably don't really have any time to actually start hashing out a new thread of conversation. So we can,
okay, it's actually not a totally new idea, but here's a thing that I saw on Kotaku not too long ago that kind of blends with the idea. What happened was, you guys may have heard about this, but there was a hacker who actually hacked Grand Theft Auto 5, and made this function where you could actually rape other players online.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you, maybe you specifically, Rob, could talk about that idea, and where it's not actually a physical thing, but then having it done online in an online setting.
It's shock value. I'll tell you that now. It's someone did it because they knew they could and they can get away with it. That's pretty much it, man. And it wasn't like a full blown like rape emote. It was literally like somebody being able to bend over another character and then do like a humping.
Oh yeah. It's pretty disturbing. I mean, the person's name is Deeper into Ass.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah, he'd go around like raping players and then force them into this animation where the player that they raped would dance for them afterwards. And yeah, very bizarre stuff.
Yeah, it's people doing shit because they can. Power dynamics, woo! You know what I mean? People getting away with shit because they can. They do it only because they can, and there's no consequences truly to their actions, obviously. But once again, you know, a conversation for another day, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the psyche and everything, you don't think it kind of relates to like actual rapists getting off on the power deal, or what do you think about that?
I mean, there's definitely something fulfilled in doing something like that, and there is a power aspect to it, obviously, because you wouldn't do something like that if you didn't want to have some sense of control of a world or of other, people, so to speak. But yeah,
I think how I would perceive it is some of it has to do with a fantasy element. Like I'd be willing to wager that there are probably more people who would like to commit something like that, but don't do it because they keep it in the realm of their fantasy, kind of going back to that whole idea of there's pedophiles who never touch a children, right? There's potential rapists who never actually rape somebody. So I think maybe if you have this opportunity to play it out in a fantasy setting, maybe in that way you're seeing the same kind of thing happening. But I also think that there's the kind of people who are just really insensitive to that kind of thing that just do it for the hell of it, just for the shock value, like Rob said.
It's just kind of odd to me that you got like this world that you can just about do pretty much anything in it, and then they just kind of add that on.
Yeah, they added the one.
Bizarre.
They added the one taboo that you couldn't do, and kind of completed the circle of whatever, the circle of rape.
Awful shit.
Yeah, the circle of awful shit.
it's perpetuating rape culture, as we would call it in the field, and what that is, and yeah, man. Not enough time, but definitely not enough time to have that conversation. But like I said, let's put it aside and bring it up, talk about it next time, and really get into it.
Yeah, next time on the show, Deeper into Ass makes an appearance.
Yes. Yeah. So next time we're gonna bring up rape again, and also bring up more video games, and continue on this thread of interchanging our communication or our discussion between rape and video games. But we are at time now, so I'm gonna close our discussion. I've been Thomas Goodine. I've been here with Zach Veronikas and Rob Diaz, and this is the Social Y podcast. Thanks for listening. See you guys next time. And that's where a jingle will play.
Jingles, jingle, jingle, Social Y.